Dr. Carter can.
All right, how's that?
Maybe just a little bit louder if you can.
Okay. All right. I'll try shouting. All right. So as Vic said, we'll be giving a presentation on the DoD-wide cold spray technology roadmap. That's an effort that's been ongoing for about 9-10 months right now. Real quickly, I'll be going through in the 10 minutes that we have background and purpose, approach, findings, and spending a little bit more time on the conclusion and recommendations. Real quickly, this program was sponsored by OSD Mantech. Mr. Keith DeVries was kind enough to lead the team on this, and this was run through America Makes and the NCDMM team, and working with the Barnes Group Advisors, of which I am a current member. Just real quickly, hold on, that's a little sensitive. All right, so the background, as Vic is alluding to, and everybody on this should probably be well familiar with, this has been work that's been going on for more than 15 years in the DoD. It has found various groups that have been championing the technology, Vic and his team, Tim Eden, and it has now been spreading out through all the services. There are many examples of where we will see cold spray technology returning significant ROIs that are very favorable. So there's obviously a big push for the operational readiness and sustainment communities to be excited about this technology. Currently, the awareness, communication, and knowledge sharing has been more of an ad hoc relationship. This has been kind of a grassroots. It's kind of a bottom-up activity that has been growing over years, and that has worked very well. As you are aware, we have 700 people that are attending this meeting. That is testament to the hard work of the entire CSAT team to make sure that communications and information sharing is going on. So why do we need a roadmap? To understand all the activities. Now it is starting to grow big enough and to push forward in a way that we want to make sure that we are guiding this technology appropriately. DoD wants to make sure that there's a total awareness of what's going on, identify the common needs, project future state activities. So where are we going for the next several years? And then prioritize those collaboration areas. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure we enhance the activities, accelerate adoption, and avoid duplication of effort. So what we did with the team that we put together, and I should also highly thank all of the different service members, industry representatives, and academians that were part of this process, because it was a large lift by a very large group. We started last fall. As you look over here, we had our events. We had service meetings and service reviews. Most of these were telcon type meetings where we were able to collect all the activities, start really capturing what the services were doing, and we were able to build those into 4 draft service roadmaps. As we went forward, we started doing a little bit more analysis of the input. We really started to condense that down into focus areas, and that allowed us to roll those into the high-level service roadmaps that we were working on into the winter. Sometime December, January timeframe, we went into our service workshop phase, where we actually went and had workshops at each of the service, whether they got to pick their location, where we were able to create the high-level service roadmaps. And this is where we really started condensing down to really prioritize common capabilities and gaps, populate findings into the DoD roadmap, and we were very much condensing this down into March, where pandemic was really starting to close things down. So fortunately, we were able to pull this off before we got shut down completely, where we had an integration workshop down in DC, and that allowed us to really pull together the entire integrated roadmap, prioritize the list of common gaps and collaboration areas. So now we've got an idea of what we've been doing. Now, this entire process, as I said, was really focused on gathering lots of information. There were a lot of phone calls. We tried to reach out to as many organizations as we could. So we made sure we tapped into the R&D organizations, the R&D Research Lab, ONR, AFRL. We worked with the program management offices, or PEOs, NAVAIR, NAVSEA, system support. We worked with the sustainment organizations, the depots, the fleet readiness centers, et cetera. We really tried to make sure we were sampling from all of the relevant organizations that were involved or were pulling the cold spray technology. And we worked with what we called our service leads. Those were kind of the champions for each of the services that kind of was our point of contact to make sure that we were tapped into each of the services appropriately. So what were our findings? What that started getting into was basically identifying commonalities and kind of clustering together the work that was ongoing. We identified and created the 11 kind of common areas. A lot what Vic was talking about, the work that's been going on, it's more mature, is probably the non-structural repair, whether it be aluminum, magnesium, steel, or other alloys that may be more pertinent to the various services. Areas that we're spending a lot of work going into is the capability stand-up. This is actually looking into how do you get to being able to be fully capable with cold spray. So it's standing up a booth, it's making sure that the supply chain, you have your powder sources, training, making sure you have people that are capable of running cold spray, designing for cold spray, etc. Then we get into several of the non-booth cold spray options. These are handheld. Navy has things that have to get through hatches of submarines. So, and Air Force might have on-wing repairs. So how do you do portable cold spray, or how do you get cold spray to the application instead of the other way around? Then we get into a lot of the engineering activities. So engineering for non-structural applications, this is areas where we're looking into substituting different gases for cost reduction. So it's just the engineering, some research and development and engineering activities to improve whether it is the speed, the cost, or other things for the non-structural applications, and to get them qualified. Enhancing cold spray, this is actually where we're going to drive to a much higher rate, wider nozzles, are examples. So research activities going on within the DoD that are improving cold spray technology. Engineering towards structural applications. Now this is where Vic was kind of alluding that how do you make sure that the cold spray is load bearing, gets included in the stress analysis, and the engineering that needs to go into those. Then finally we start getting into more of the application space, which is like corrosion, wear, specialty coatings. This is where we're no longer just doing cosmetic repair. We're actually building functionality into the coating. So how do you make sure that you have such as the whip coatings that Vic alluded to earlier, where you're looking at a wear application. So you want to make sure that replaces the original material and it is now a designed-in or built-in application for cold spray. Environmental and safety, this is a lot of where we're talking about using cold spray to replace or remove toxic chemicals that are currently being used. This is chromium, cadmium, and a few others that are particularly of interest, and a lot of these cluster into different types of programs that may be funded by CERTIP or ESTCP. Finally, we get into the structural repair and non-destructive testing that kind of cluster together because the NDT was kind of the critical parameters that really kind of enable structural repair. That is kind of where we're getting very mature right now. And finally, the part manufacturer or cold spray additive, where cold spray is the manufacturing process. And then final, we have kind of a catch-all, which is unique materials and parts. This is where unique applications where only cold spray will work. There are several of them that get very specific to the various services, and there are a number of applications that came up across that. So by clustering these way, we were able to roll these into roadmaps. Now these are not shown here in great detail because they are enormously complicated. There are hundreds of lines of information on programs, timelines, deliverables. Many are also probably going to be a limited distribution to within the government. We will be working on, part of our report will be a Distribution A report that will be coming out later this summer. And there will be a Distribution D, which will include roadmaps and things that are a little bit more specific. And these are, we have various levels. Some are very detailed, some are very top level, so those will be published out later this year. So finally, let me get into a little bit, some of the things that are probably a little more relevant are some of the findings and ultimate recommendations that will be going forward. I don't know, how am I doing on time here, but we were able to identify various gaps, prioritize them with all the different representatives from the DoD, from various services, and then assigned a priority to it and for the recommendation and the benefit, timelines, cost, and period of performance. So you'll see that we have some that are, we talk about the culture of collaboration was both listed as a high strength and a high weakness. within the program. It's been very, very good so far, but people see room for improvement, especially as you grow cold spray implementation across the DoD and push it further into sustainment activity. So there was, our recommendation would be a cold spray integration working group. That way we could basically have the benefit of harmonizing our activities, improving communication. It wouldn't cost a whole lot, less than $1 million a year, and it would be kind of an ongoing, kind of perpetual activity since we would need that to be staffed. So we have recommendations like these, as you can, I'll leave these up to people to read, 12 to 18 months, and some are much, much longer. So basically graphically representing that as we, my last slide here, we want to be able to say we're recommending that a cold spray integration working group would be necessary or advantageous to move this forward. And the big thing is to make sure we collaborate and coordinate across the services and also have some ownership of maintaining roadmaps, things along those lines. The short-term projects, which would be 12 to 18 months, would be setting up a common database and taxonomy structure. We're starting to see some fragmentation across the services where taxonomies are a little bit different. So for the DoD, it would probably make sense to find some commonality in that space. That way we can use that as the foundation to move forward on activities such as safety. One of the biggest problems that I think everybody's familiar with that's been trying to set up a cold spray booth within the DoD is getting approval to turn on your cold spray system. It's one thing to get the acquisitions, another thing to get through all the fire safety and other requirements, and there's inconsistency because many of those requirements are location-based. So there would be a request to go ahead and let's create a workbook or other document that will allow for just a standard workbook that allowed a reference for all the safety marshals and everybody else to be able to sign off on these or have more comfort in signing off on cold spray booths and their safety. Another area would be training. How do we find commonality? Where do we see commonality for training of people, whether they be hands-on, engineer, or other? As always, supply chain, making sure that we have a robust supply chain without single point failure potentials in them, and make sure that that moves forward. Longer term, developing, one thing is lay out the training, another thing would be getting into the training curricula. Supply chain maturation, and finally, really far out is going to be the ICME, basically computationally understanding your process parameter and material relationships to predict performance for structural repair and cold spray additive. So with that, I'll wrap up. And
Rob, we're running close to time. If you can wrap up the next couple slides and get a question or two in here.
That's my last slide. That's perfect.
That's perfect then. So I think Aaron Nardi has a question for you from the audience.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, guys? Yep. All right, perfect. So got a question here about funding. So the question is, now that we have the roadmap, what is the intent for execution of it from a funding standpoint? So not sure if you want to try to talk to that, or you'd rather not.
Well, I would not be able to answer that in any way, shape, or form. This is merely recommendations that are going back to Keith and OSD Mantech office. So from that standpoint, we're not in the position to speak to funding opportunities.
Right, and I guess I'll jump in on that point. Is there's going to be an ongoing back and forth between the different organizations with the DoD, depending on which roadmap something falls on, what things are across roadmaps and so forth, but that hasn't all been defined yet. So, and I think that's the only question, which is perfect timing. So, well, thank you, Rob.
And again, I think the input from the entire organizations and all the different people that contributed to this really was a large team effort, and very happy with the outcome.
All right, thanks. And next up, we have Janice Bryant. She's going to be talking about rapid transition for NAVC, so a small cell transition. And Janice, if you're on.
Let's see if that
All
works.
right.
And we got a mic.
Yeah, I hear you. Go right ahead.
Woohoo. Hey, thanks, Aaron. Rob, great presentation. Always hard to follow you, so we'll do our best here. Thanks all, and what I want to do is break away a little bit in tradition with me from some of the highly technical end of cold spray and really look more at some of the transitional elements. Waiting for the presentation to pop up here on the screen, but in the interest of time, I think we'll try to get rolling. So I'd submit that most of us are struggling, to try to, Vic's point earlier today, to really try to transition cold spray into our operations. So from the Naval Shipyards the last couple of years, I've had the privilege of working closely with them